Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the Professor, Greg Dooley, and the Pundit, Steve Clarke. Men, take the mic.
That's right. This is the Professor and the Pundit with Greg Dooley and Steve Clarke. We are presented by Nick Hopwood, a certified financial planner, founder, and president of Peak Wealth Management. Retire with confidence. We'll be hearing from Nick later on, but it's great to be back after taking a week off, Greg, to get some feedback and put it together. So now here we are with the second week, and I think things are going to sound dramatically different.
And sound different. And speaking of sound, how about that sound of legendary PA announcer at Michigan Stadium, Carl, helping us out with the intro. I've shared it with a few close friends, but oh my gosh, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that he did it.
Carl Grapentine has been doing the PA broadcasting from the stadium for decades. And for you to be able to get him and for him to be so nice enough to do that, I think is just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, so hopefully we're going to add a few surprises along the way, guys. And yeah, we're really excited. And the feedback has been awesome. I noticed, Steve, we have big fans in Germany and in Colombia, as well as the United States, listening. It's funny, the data shows you all that stuff.
This is a multinational podcast now, Greg. That's just great after week one.
Yeah, we got really good feedback, and we'll continue to listen to that. And if you have feedback, rate the show. You review the show or reach out to us on Twitter, or if you know us, let us know what you like and what you'd like to see in future episodes. But yeah, we plan to be back every week now and really excited about it.
So let's remind people of who we are. First of all, I'm a broadcaster for, I guess, now close to 30 years and mostly on WTKA in Ann Arbor. And you are now a professor at the University of Michigan talking about leadership in college athletics, the history of college athletics, and now for this spring semester coming up, you are doing one on NIL for the very first time.
And I know a lot of people know you, Steve, from TKA and, of course, the pregame football show. And a lot of people know me from mvictors.com for writing about history and my little segment on the pregame football show, This Week in Michigan Football History. And yeah, and I'm the professor now because I've been teaching those 3 classes at University of Michigan, and right now actually piloting the NIL class, spring term.
And I'm the pundit because since you're the professor, we had to find a word that started with P.
But you are a pundit, Steve.
And we wanted to make sure it was clean. So I know where your mind is going, and we're sticking with pundit.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, I think we're going to stick with it. And we're going to make T-shirts eventually. By the way, I saw Rishi Narayan at the ChadTough Gala this weekend, and actually I'm wearing one of the Underground printing shirts, and Underground is going to make some shirts for us here eventually, and they're helping us out, so that's cool.
So tell us about the other night. You were at the ChadTough Gala at the Chrysler Center. This is something that you have been doing every year. This is a cause that you really believe in and you want to take part in, and you fully do. So you've had some great stories along the way, and they just kept continuing on over this past weekend.
Yeah, so let's set up. If you don't know what ChadTough is, it's ubiquitous in this area because it's in honor of research for a DIPG, which is a horrible brain cancer that affects children, and took the life of Chad Carr, of course, Lloyd Carr's grandson, tragically years ago. And Tammy Carr started this foundation to fight this disease, support it, and it has become kind of the biggest, if you will, program, kind of a who's who, a marriage between athletics and hospital and research. And they do it at various locations, but they do it at the Chrysler Center. And it's a massive event every year. The only thing that compares is the Charles Woodson event on Main, which Charles is behind and benefits Mott Hospital. So this is a huge event. And yeah, they had their gala this weekend. They raised millions of dollars. It's a fantastic event. But it is a chance to see a lot of the kind of the who's who with either Michigan ties or athletic ties, all in one room. We're talking university officials to coaches to even players this year and to all the people in the community who are involved in Michigan.
Just so the people, maybe they've forgotten, Tammy Carr has spoken in front of a subcommittee in Congress over DIPG. And the thing is, if your child is diagnosed with DIPG and mostly affects young children, it's essentially a death sentence. There is no cure. And right now they're just trying to figure out how to extend, but also at the same time trying to find a cure because it's absolutely horrendous to lose your child.
Yeah, and it is effectively a party, and there's their program, and they talk about DPG, and it's sad, but they also try to make it fun, and with the events and things like that. And one of the things that you get a chance to mingle, and we mentioned Carl. Carl had one of the auction items that you could bid on to raise money, and it was simply connect with Carl and record. Carl will record a personal message for you, a voicemail, something like that.
Just like he did for us.
Yeah. Well, guess how much it went for?
Well, the opening bid started at $200.
Yeah, I think it reached almost $800. so I don't know if we owe Carl a hearty.
You need to write a check?
I don't. We're gonna have to get another sponsor then, because that is a heavy, but it's amazing. But they raised so much because people want to get behind it, and I did get a chance to meet some coaches that I haven't met. I met Coach Norato, of course, the new hockey coach, and my wife Jessica was there. And I said, "Hey, Jessica, this is Coach Norato. He's the hockey coach." And if you've seen Coach Norato on TV, he looks so young. He looks young in person. Okay, he's got kind of a
boyish look.
Definitely. And so Jessica went, "The hockey coach?" Like, no, the hockey coach.
The head coach. What she meant? She meant to say the head coach.
Yeah, really. Like,
not the assist, not a grad assistant coach,
or not, of a local hockey team. No, the Michigan hockey coach, and he was great. He was very gracious. In fact, I think I'm going to get him to come into my class in the fall to speak on leadership, nice. And I'd really like to hear him touch on some of the challenges of kind of emerging from the shadow of an iconic coach. I know Mel Pearson was here in between, but Red Berenson and his legacy. And I see the same thing going on with Bonnie Thole. By the way, Carol Hutchins was there, said hi to her. She is going to be the ambassador next year. Like Juwan Howard and Coach Barnes-Arico, they gave a speech and things like that. It will be Hutch and Hutch next year. So it'll be Carol Hutchins and Aiden Hutchinson are the kind of the ambassadors for the program next year. And they announced that at the end, right? Who is it going to be? And it's Hutch and Hutch. And of course, they played Billie Jean, and the place went absolutely bananas.
Yeah, from Hard Knocks. And yes, you got to sing the song. That made Aiden Hutchinson famous throughout the entire nation, that at least the ones that watch HBO. Tell me about the night itself. My son was there, not Saturday night. He was there Thursday night setting things up. So please tell me nothing fell down.
No, and it's great that he did that. I'll tell you what, you would not know. You know you're entering Chrysler, and you know you're on the concourse of Chrysler Center. But when you enter through the tunnel, you wouldn't recognize it. They transformed the place from the ceilings on down with streamers and tables. And I don't know if they can move some of the stands back or something, because it looks way larger than the court surface.
You can. You can move like the first 15 rows or so, maybe only 12. But when you push the stands back, that allows you to play full court width-wise.
I got you. All for practice and stuff.
Exactly.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So they must do that, and they did. It was awesome. And speaking of Hutchinson, a funny story. You know the first part of it, Steve. But we were actually at a ChadTough event, my wife Jessica and I'm a 6-foot-something bald guy, and Jessica's slender, tall, blonde woman. And we entered this event, and the woman at the desk handed us 2 name tags.
Before you said your names?
Before we said anything, her arm was extended, and it was Chris Hutchinson and his wife. They handed us them as if, "Hi, Hutchinsons." And, of course, this is Aiden's parents, and they've been on TV a lot with Aiden, and Chris played football at Michigan. And so everyone got a big kick out of that. And I did too. And I looked at pictures of them together, and I found one that, okay, I get it. The woman was horribly embarrassed, but that was like a year or 2 ago. So last night at the gala, with Aiden being the next year's ambassador for ChadTough, the Hutchinsons were there, the couple.
Chris and Melissa.
Yeah, Chris and Melissa were there. So I said, "Jessica, we got to go up to them and tell them this story."
You did.
You didn't. We did. So we went over, and I went up to Chris, and I said, "Hey, I'm Greg Dooley. I got to tell you this story." And I told him the story, and they died laughing. And she goes, "I get it." She looked at us and goes, I get it. So that was really a trip. They were great, by the way.
I mean, I've seen some highlights of previous years. People donate enough, and Jim Harbaugh's throwing them a football from across the room, and of course that makes everybody nervous because you don't want to be the guy that drops it and then wipes out everybody's wine.
Yeah, well,
beer.
We did have a little incident with that. It was basketballs, but you donate money and they throw a basketball and you're supposed to catch it.
Yeah.
We had a couple of table clearing mini basketball incidents.
No.
Yeah, so that's always fun.
What, after they ate or before they ate?
After, but
people were done eating at the point.
Yeah, it was great. And you mentioned I've been to it a few times, and it's awesome, and we love it. But one thing they do, and I had a little bit of a Larry David Curb Your Enthusiasm moment. If you haven't seen the ESPN Gene Wojciechowski narrated special that they did on really when they introduced this to the world, this story of ChadTough and Chad Carr, it's heart-wrenching. When I first saw it on ESPN, I was bawling, Steve. It is so well done, and it is so sad. Okay. But now I've seen it like 30 times. Okay. I've seen it a lot.
You're right. It is so well done. It is a tearjerker.
And it's heart-wrenching. But now I've seen it so many times. And Steve, I'm sitting there, and they showed it at the beginning of the program, and they served food in front of us, and I'm starving. Okay.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No.
So the couple next to me has never been to this thing before, and the guy's wife has never seen this, and she is bawling. And I'm sitting there like waving the wine lady over, and I'm eating.
You're eating.
And I'm respectful. Steve, I was starving.
And you're eating crunchy food. Right? Tell me it wasn't crunchy food.
It might have been a little loud, but hey, respectfully eating. But Steve, I was starving, and so Jessica's handing this woman, tissues over me as I'm like, eating my food, grabbing bread and that kind of thing. But so we had that.
Hey, pass the salt.
Yeah, right.
Oh no.
Anyway, Jawan did a great job. There were football players there too. I met, who was there? Jamie Morris was there. Chin, who runs another one of the collectives, was there. He runs the Hail Impact, which is going to be the charitable collective, was there. Tons of coaches. Most of the football staff represented. By the way, they gave, one of the auction items was most of the coaches donate time, coffee, dinner, hang out for a day, get a tour of the facility type of things. They had one for Coach Herb, the strength conditioning coach, where you could go down there and hang out with Herb, watch a workout. And I don't know what that fetched, but it was a lot, and that was cool. So it was great. Yeah.
I want to know about social graces because I think depending on where you sit, I think determines whether you need to stop eating, whether you're finished with your meal or not. Like if you're sitting in the front table and the guest speaker is right in front of you, I think that's one of those times where you just stop eating altogether. I also look for cameras because if there's cameras around, I'm very serious. If there's cameras around, I know the cameras are shooting, and if they're showing like live feeds, multi-cameras on big jumbotrons next to you, I'm not eating because somebody tells a joke and they've got your camera fixed on you, and you take that moment to put something in your mouth. That's what's being shown on the jumbotron.
Thanks, man.
Don't want that.
I didn't look for any cameras.
When you go to these events,
all right,
look at where your table is in relationship to the speaker. Are you right up front or in your back? If you're in the back, you're probably clear. That could be in there.
It's a great call. So we've got the Curb Your Enthusiasm playbook for charitable events, social functions. Right.
Now, normally in these functions, they stop serving alcohol right before the speech too, right?
Well, so we talked about Chrysler and how it was decorated. Well, they had all the drinks set up on the concourse. You enter Chrysler, you go to the concourse, everyone hangs out before the event on the concourse. And they have basically where you buy Coke and popcorn during a game. They have all those concession stations set up as full bars.
You're teasing me. The regular concession stands selling beer and wine and cocktails, you're teasing me.
Correct.
That's not a regular thing they do at Michigan.
That is not, but apparently for this event they can. But what people know is, and what you kind of hinted at, is once you are seated downstairs, there is no bar. They have white and red wine, okay? But the bar is closed. Everybody knows this. So now, because they've done this a few times.
Except for the person who was crying during the...
Right, but if you want to drink beer with dinner, you got to grab a beer or two because the program's pretty long. And I noticed everyone knows this. And you do see the people like kind of racing up as people are telling you it's time. You need to go down to the floor. We're starting the program. everyone who wants a drink goes to these concession stands. And Steve, they literally started to pull like the garage door down, and arms, hands, tip money, deals with the devil were made, promises.
So people are probably racing up the stairs, forgetting that this is the last call, or at least some semi-last call. They're throwing their money out of their pockets, just hoping they get a cold one, reach their hand underneath,
I'll take anything.
Whatever, and kind of hoping they can grab it before it's completely closed
Basically, yes. And so they literally had to pull them down, and it was quite a scene. So, yeah, but we were good. We were good.
It's like an embassy or something like that as the troops are leaving.
Hey, listen, and they know what they're getting into when they serve alcohol, before an event. People are smart about it, so there were a few double and triple fisted people there. If you can be triple fisted, coming down. So, but it's an awesome event, and shout out to Tammy. And I mean, can you imagine losing a child and then dedicating really her professional and a lot of her personal life to this cause? I mean, it takes a special kind of person to do that and do it as well as she does. Mm-hmm. I mean, the event's fantastic.
Yeah, I think we do imagine. We saw it through her stories.
Yeah.
That she was posting on Facebook and in Twitter, and those that know her, we read them. We certainly could sympathize, not all of us could empathize, and thank goodness we all can't empathize, but we could certainly sympathize. And so, we did think about it, and that's why everybody in the area is still involved to it through now.
Yeah, and you say in the area, like, it's a business. It's a business that raises money as opposed to generates revenue for profit or whatever. And they have teams of people who support them, help them, and then volunteers, like you said, Hayden helped out. It's armies of people in this community rallying around this cause, and it's awesome. Tracy Wolfson, by the way.
From CBS?
Yeah, she hosted the event. She was like the MC and did a fantastic job, and those are the kind of people you can pull. Mitch Albom is involved. He adopted a child who was affected by DIPG from Haiti, and it really is a who's who of the sports and medical science, all those great things. I think that we love Michigan football, but this is one of those things that we don't talk about a lot, is just the power of the things you can do for good related to sports and athletics and this culture that we've created here in Michigan.
This is The Professor and the Pundit with Greg Dooley and Steve Clarke, and we are presented by Nick Hopwood, certified financial planner, founder, and president of Peak Wealth Management. Retire with confidence.
Well, first of all, guys, thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. We're really proud to be the presenting sponsor of The Professor and the Pundit. We're excited for what's to come. And congratulations, Greg, on your semi-retirement gig. I loved hearing about that in the pilot.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, it's been quite a ride. So Nick and I were hanging out on Main Street in Ann Arbor at Real Seafood Company, and we were talking cash management because interest rates, right? It matters now that what you're doing with your cash. It has bite to it. We're almost 5% now, and that matters to me. Do you have clients who come to you with questions about, hey, what do I do with my cash?
Yeah, for like the first time in my career of nearly 25 years, we have money markets pushing 5%. Super exciting. So that's where we're directing people for their bank alternative. Their emergency funds don't need to be in the bank paying nothing. They should be in a money market paying nearly 5%. So that's the first step. So we have this concept called peak income conductor. And basically we're saying, what are our expenses and what are our needs and what's our income? And in this case, we have a semi-retirement situation, so perhaps a deficit, okay? If we have a deficit of X...
Not perhaps.
Okay. So the deficit is X. We need to have a couple of years to cover that in safe money. All right, so that's where the money market comes in. But beyond those couple of years, and for everyone it's different, could be 1, 2, 3 years, where it's a comfort level. But beyond that, we want to be able to lock in these higher rates for longer. And so that's where traditional fixed income is coming to be exciting again, where for most of my career, it was simply a diversifier. But now there's actual real income to be made in bonds, in fixed income, where we can make not just 5% for this year, but we can kind of lock in 5 and 6% for maybe 5 or 10 years.
You're right, because Steve and I talk about stocks and markets and CNBC and hosts all the time. We rarely have ever talked about cash, other than to say, I have some money in the sideline, maybe I want to invest
Cash is for losers.
Yeah. Well, It's not anymore, Steve.
No, I know.
Cash
I know.
is cool now. It's super cool. In fact, it's really the first time. I mean, I know you said 20, so I feel like it's been that long since that mattered to me at all. So,
And Nick, if people want to know more, how can they get a hold of you?
You can schedule an appointment with us at peakwm.com or give us a call at 734-681-7575.
One more time with that phone number?
734-681-7575.
So we appreciate you listening to that portion of the program of The Professor and the Pundit with Greg Dooley and Steve Clarke. And we have football topics to talk about today.
we do. So here's a tie-in too, because one of the things they did this year at ChadTough was you could wear your own, you could wear athletic shoes. In other words, they encouraged you to kind of get funny, funky with athletic shoes at the event, you know, because it's cocktail attire, you know, so most people are wearing a jacket. Ladies have dresses, but there were a lot of like orange Jordan because that's the color ChadTough, and I was rocking my Adidas. And it does bring to mind, I saw, Steve, that UnderArmour's deal with Notre Dame is expiring here, and UnderArmour is getting out of the college athletics branding and apparel business, or as a focus. And I don't know what's going on with UnderArmour, but they seem to be struggling a little bit. Maybe we can ask Nick Hopwood his take on it, right? So Notre Dame's up for bid here, assuming Nike and Adidas are going to be the big suitors. But there is word, or there's the notion or the idea being floated around that their deal, when they sign it, will be a non-exclusive shoe deal and maybe apparel deal. And what do I mean by that? Meaning that they are going to allow latitude for student athletes to have their own shoe deal and play at Notre Dame. So let's say they're a Nike brand that, speaking of, CJ Carr is committed. He's a 5-star quarterback from Saline, Michigan. He's heading to Notre Dame next year. He could have a deal with Adidas, even though Nike is the apparel and official provider for Notre Dame athletics. CJ could have his own Adidas shoe and wear it. Okay, why would they want to do that? Well, with the recent cases that opened up NIL in college athletics, the Alston case, in the Supreme Court's opinion, it demonstrated cracks in the whole notion of the nature of NCAA and college athletics being this special thing, effectively exposing it basically as a cartel. And there are going to be cracks in it. And one of those cracks, if you read the tea leaves, is going to be something along the lines of revenue sharing. And so this is an opportunity for Notre Dame, for a prominent school, to crack that door open and effectively say, hey, before someone tells them you have to share this revenue, they can say, well, this is a concession we're making. We're going to allow this flexibility. We're effectively going to give up some of our rights, aka money, to give this latitude to our student athletes to have their own shoes, have their own deals, and have maybe a most favored nation status or something like that with the brand. Say, hey, you can have your own deal with Nike and we'll help you with it, or something like that. But I think if they do that, what do you think the reaction is going to be from other schools?
I think everybody's going to copy it, Greg.
Yeah.
I mean, if anybody who sees something successful working at one place, they will copycat it and do it otherwise. And if Michigan is smart, they're seeing already what you're seeing and are probably already working towards that.
So our contract with Nike, we can, I believe, it at least goes through 2027
This
right
is
now.
the Jordan brand of Nike.
Yeah. So, they do make a distinction, but
Yeah.
that's our apparel contract. And I believe it goes through 2027 with the right to extend the current terms through 2031. So first of all, I don't think there's any way we will extend it beyond 2027. But to your point, if Notre Dame does this, and maybe not even, I think we should be talking to Jordan Brand, Nike right now about options. If they want to extend the deal with Michigan, talk about it now and think about how we would structure such a thing. Now, Michigan typically isn't the first mover, the cutting edge, school. We usually wait. Everyone gets frustrated, and we usually do the right thing later, after the dust is settled. And so my guess is Michigan will do that. If Notre Dame goes this way, that's what Michigan will. They won't be proactive, but I think they should consider it strongly.
You hear about tradition at Michigan. You can't have tradition unless you are innovative, because if you are always following, it's somebody else's tradition you're following. It's somebody else's innovation you're following. Michigan used to be innovative. And as you say, now they're a little bit more cautious approach. And I'm not saying that's a wrong approach. I'm just saying that if you're going back as being leaders and best and relying on tradition, to me, tradition is based on innovation.
I never thought about it that way, but you're right. Now, sometimes tradition is forged because you're the victors, okay? Mm-hmm. We weren't the first team to wear a winged helmet, okay? Right. Not even close, in fact. But it's Michigan's is the winged helmet.
Do you know who started the winged helmet?
I don't know who had it first, but there were a bunch of schools, actually Ohio State, Michigan State, and what it was the Spalding helmet had this front part on it, and some teams started to paint it, right? Mm-hmm. And then Fritz Chrysler added the stripes, one at Princeton. But there are a few teams that had a winged-like look on the front before Michigan. So, yeah, it was all around that time period of the 1930s.
Ohio State claimed Script, Ohio.
Right.
And we know better.
Well, we taught them to do it. I'll tell you that this is going to burn some people, but those who stay will be champions is attributed to Bo Schembechler. Of course. In fact, the Schembechler estate, I believe, has the trademark on the phrase. It's etched all over Schembechler Hall. When you walk in, it's on the wall. It's on multiple walls. I'm sure it's in the locker room. That is the name of a chapter of a book by Bear Bryant that was published in 1960, is Those Who Stay Will Be Champions.
In 1960.
Around 1960, chapter 12. And, of course, Bo came to Michigan in 1969. 69. And it wasn't like there were a million football books back then. I'm guessing that Bear Bryant's book on football was on every coach's shelf or shared. I would almost guarantee you that Bo lifted that phrase. And I'm not knocking him, but to my point, it's not Bear Bryant's, it's Bo's. Okay, And Bear Bryant was a big winner, but marketing has something to do with it too, with tradition.
So,
yeah.
The idea that players could be wearing different shoes, and if the players can be paid for it, great. How does this hurt or help the athletic department?
Because it could make their portion of the deal a little less lucrative, maybe. But I'd argue whatever that next contract is, it's going to be bigger than the existing one, and you carve out a piece of that. So athletic department budgets, they basically run at a deficit or exactly even. Somehow Michigan's athletic department budget seems to be always plus or minus $1 million of whatever the revenues are, right? That's what we spend. Mm-hmm. It's not a for-profit business. We spend it and make a lot of money.
But they do talk about how they're self-sustaining.
Yeah, they do.
Because most of them aren't.
They aren't. And I do think, and I've seen a lot of data on this, and I've looked at it for my class, a lot of athletic departments get really loose with how they represent their numbers. Mm-hmm. And the tale is most of them make a lot of money, more than they show. Some of them don't. Some of them are struggling. UCLA would not be coming to the Big Ten if it weren't for the financial stress that UCLA is under right now. Mm-hmm. That is real. Rutgers is $250 million in debt if you strip away the fake stuff, trying to compete in football and trying to compete in other sports. They are counting on this TV deal.
They're finally getting a full share, though, by now. Because they weren't getting the full share when they first started in the Big Ten, and neither was Nebraska.
Or Maryland. Right. It's close, I think. And I wonder if UCLA and USC negotiated a full share as part of this.
Exactly. It had to have been a discussion point. I know that Rutgers is now spending money.
Yes.
And they're spending it on facilities, and that was one of the reasons why Greg Schiano, as a condition, said to coming back. He was going to come back to Rutgers if you promised to start spending money on facilities and football and things like that. And Rutgers is holding to that. But they're also building beyond just football at Rutgers, which suggests to me that the partial share is starting to become more of a full share.
Yeah, and by share you mean the Big Ten is basically a group of the schools that isn't for the benefit of the schools. And by the way, it's a not-for-profit or nonprofit organization. And yes, it keeps some of the money in the Big Ten coffers, but the money is just basically split evenly. In fact, you can go out and see their tax return, and it shows how they share their revenue with each of the schools. And the schools that added, they didn't get a full share of that money right away. It's phased in, I think, over a couple decades, I think it was. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe they're close to getting their full share. But, you asked about how will this impact athletic departments if they start to give latitude to the student athletes. I think there's enough money. I think if they negotiate a new contract, it'll probably add more to the athletic department coffers than are there now. But I do think they'll give up some of their flexibility and rights, which will cost them a little bit to give the rights to these student athletes to wear whatever shoe they want. Because if you're the Jordan brand, you got to understand that J.J. McCarthy might not be wearing Jordans out there. And that might be part of the value. And it's got to be part of the value of what that original deal is. I don't think every Notre Dame student athlete is going to have their own shoe deal, but a few will. And probably some of the most prominent ones will. And it might not be. And again, this is all theoretical.
Right.
This may not happen this way, but it makes so much sense that when I asked you, what will Michigan do if Notre Dame does? The first thing you said, Steve, was, yeah, Michigan's got to do that too. And I think what you're going to see is that's something that might attract a student athlete who's trying to decide between Michigan and Notre Dame. Oh, I can have my own shoe deal. I think, and then once you get that into the ecosystem a little more, I think it'll probably be a little more prominent.
So who manages that? Let's say player 2025 recruiting class comes in and he's 5-star exceptional talent and a shoe company is interested in giving this kid a shoe deal. Who manages that negotiation? The kid's parents, the kid himself, or is that where the collectives come in? And does the new recruit trust a particular collective to get their family and their son the best shoe deal possible?
So the good and bad news, it can be any of those things. It can be your parents. It can be your uncle who's a lawyer. It could be your middle school coach who knows something about marketing. It could be an actual agent from a big CAA or one of the big agencies like RE Gold, right? It could be a collective. And some collectives offer that service. We'll help you with this. We'll help you pair you. We'll help you understand the opportunities that are there. We'll help you with the contract language. We'll effectively be your agent, is what some of the collectives. And that's what one arm of what Jared Wangler's Valiant Management does. Now, Jared's kind of running two things. One's Champion Circle, which is a collective where fans can go on. We can go on there right now, and you can click a monthly commitment, and that money will be there to support players at card signings and other deals and other things they do to make money. Champion Circle will arrange that. The other side is a for-profit, effectively management service where they'll work as your agent. But anyone can be an agent, and I say it's good and bad. So when you're recruiting a student athlete right now, they really, I think what happens inside the coaching is they really need to understand who the young man's or young woman's circle is and really understand, am I recruiting this player and is he bringing with him his team, right, from his hometown? And that may be fine, right? That might be fine. Maybe his mom, dad is a lawyer and maybe they have experience in this, but you need to know who is this person's agent, if you will, because it can be anybody. Right now, it could be anybody, and you know who it's not. It's not the athletic department. Yeah, that's the one thing the athletic department can't be right now, is the person who's advising and completely helping and structuring deals and doing that. Although I've heard some schools are really dipping their toes into that.
South. Well, anyone in the South.
Well, everyone talks about Clemson when I speak to people, and I don't know if they're doing that, but they have a special studio where student athletes can come in, and it has the special lighting and all the backgrounds and all that stuff and create their photos, their videos, the TikTok videos, whatever they want to do. But they're like, come on in, we'll help you. And we'll help you market yourself and build your brand. And here are all the great tools that we have.
So let's assume, okay, so the athletic department can't be directly involved, but they're going to be affected because here's what I see. The race to find some sort of freshman shoe, even if they're established. Let's forget that they're freshmen. Let's just say an established player. There might be somebody who is really good at getting their best deal and somebody who's representing somebody else may not be getting the best deal. In fact, they probably got fleeced. They signed a contract that basically paid them a fourth or a half of what somebody else did. Now let's imagine School A, being Michigan, got the best deal for their kid. And let's just imagine Michigan State didn't. A player at Michigan State got half, 2/3, 1/3, whatever. You have that kind of disparity a couple of times, and a campus gets a reputation that they don't know what they're doing. And if the athletic department is supposed to be hands-off, then they're powerless to step in, but the program suffers the consequences.
Well, yeah, and what you're talking about is where the laws and the Supreme Court and a lot of the momentum is going is not only do the student athletes deserve more rights and flexibility here that actually everyone else has. Like, we have young kids, they could go out and get a job, work somewhere. If they had a social media deal, they can take it. It's really no different, and that's where it's going. But the other part of it is is this fair, and are we looking after the student athletes? That's kind of the overarching thing, what's fair and what's right. And so there is more momentum to go, well, are we really going to allow this Wild West of deals and bad deals to happen? Shouldn't we then go, well, maybe we should allow the athletic departments more flexibility? Now, they look at all the deals. They have to register the companies that do, but there's nothing stopping a student athlete from signing a horrible contract or a bad, you said rip them off. The worst thing could be is they sign a contract that effectively covers not only their college but pro career with a bad agent, with a bad deal that covers them beyond college and into the pros when they're making real money.
Assuming they make it.
Yeah, assuming they make it, absolutely. Yeah, we're obviously talking theoretical. Not every kid is going to have a shoe deal. Not every kid's going to make the NFL. Very few do. But that's something out there. So my point is, if you have a Wild West of all these quote-unquote agents everywhere and deals and good deals and bad deals and people talking and comparing, at some point, someone's going to go, wait, this is out of control. Are we really looking after the student athletes here? Yeah, we gave them these rights, but are we protecting them? And that sounds paternal, but these are young, really young kids, okay? And they don't all have the uncle who's the lawyer or the parents who, went to Oxford and can help them. Obviously, right? Who does? What percentage of young men have that resource in their lives? So, by the way, the ones who do are going to benefit because they are going to have that. So who is that helping? That's helping a certain demographic. Well, the NCAA and the courts don't want that either. So I would think that they would start to say, hey, athletic departments, okay, here's more latitude to help the student athletes. And I think it's coming, but it's not there right now. So your scenario where players talking, someone getting screwed, someone signing a bad contract, absolutely can happen right now.
And it could affect the university that's recruiting them. And obviously when you're talking about shoes, you're probably talking more of a basketball thing being affected than football. I mean, football players can get it, but I think the big money is in the basketball shoe contract.
Absolutely. And I had Jimmy King of the Fab Five, and it's just such a perfect example because, well, they suspected when they were in college that they may not all hit it big in the NBA, all five of them, right? So Jimmy King had a short stint in the NBA, made a little bit of money. Ray Jackson did not.
Right.
And, of course, Jalen, Jawan, and Chris made a lot of money in the NBA and still do in what the things they're doing. They did approach Nike about some post-college compensation for all the marketing they did, and they didn't get anything. And so you do have that case, and you do have the situations like Hunter Dickinson going to Kansas. I think Jimmy King would say he should go ahead and do that. He should get that money that he can now because it may not be there. Why wouldn't you?
Speaking of Hunter Dickinson, he's off at Kansas. Some people are mad, fine. I'm disappointed that any good player that leaves Michigan goes somewhere else. That doesn't mean I don't like the kid anymore. I'm just disappointed. But from his standpoint, whatever college career he's got left, this is a chance to actually make money because they're essentially eliminating the five, the low post players in professional basketball. It's just how the game is evolving. And you saw Luka Garza was the consensus player of the year.
That's right.
And barely got drafted. It's at Pistons for a while, and then he's gone. It's the same thing with Hunter. Ira Weintraub from the Michigan Insider, Sam's partner, said, look, you went to a draft where Michael Olowokandi was the number one player drafted.
Right.
If Hunter Dickinson was around 20 years ago, he obviously would be the number one player taken in the NBA draft. Yeah. Odin, millions and millions set for life. It's different. The game's evolved, and those low post position players are not as worthy in the professional life as they are in a college basketball setting. So Hunter Dickinson sees that Bufkin's leaving, Jett Howard's leaving. It's starting back from ground up again. And the NIL money didn't seem to appear to be there for basketball as what he thought it would be in Ann Arbor. And in Kansas, it's well established, and he's going to get his payday, and I get it. don't like it, but I understand it. What about you?
Well, first off, it's just we were so spoiled by what John Beilein did, and I am rooting so hard for Juwan because I went to school with Fab Five. I was here with those guys, so it's just a big part of my life, and a lot of people's, frankly. But it was just gut-wrenching watching this team. So for me, the fact that guys are leaving, like Hunter and things like that, I'm like, what do you call it when you just throw your hand in and get a new set of cards? I'm that. I'm throwing my hand in, and these guys want to move, and I'd like to see a changeover. The other thing is I think it might be good for Hunter to get a new maybe focus on what he wants to do, and I think it will be good for him personally and his development, and maybe there's a chance he could do something in the NBA, but I don't know if it was going to be here. I think he needed to change his scenery. Like George Steinbrenner hired and fired Billy Martin like 6 times, right? I think every once in a while a change of scenery or a break or a cut from the culture that you're in is a good thing. But yeah, Kansas, of course, in their community is the equivalent of, in their minds, is their huge sport, is their football program like here in Ann Arbor. It's the thing that drives everything. They have, by the way, the original rules of basketball that were penned and typed by James Naismith. They bought them for millions of dollars, and they're on display there. So I totally understand.
Yeah, and Kansas now with Hunter Dickinson joining it figures to be in 1 seed. 10 months from now or so when the brackets come out, Kansas will be fighting for it. They'll be contender for the Big 12 championship out there and getting that 1 seed. So, yeah, I get it. I'll be following from afar, seeing how he's doing.
Yeah, and we were talking about the other day, just chatting, this kind of ecosystem that could be created here where the Eastern Michigans of the world, the star player on Eastern Michigan's, let's just say football team, maybe they have a really good lineman, which we've seen. We've seen guys from Central Michigan drafted in the first round, skill positions, everything, right?
There was a player, was it Fisher?
Yeah,
was the number one player overall out of Central.
From Central, yeah. So you have those, but you wonder if that guy, Fisher, if he would have stuck it out at Central Michigan. Obviously it worked out for him, but he could transfer and be on TV every week, and it worked out. He was the number one pick, whatever the combine did and all that. But you wonder if guys like Amani Bates, you talk about his story, but there's a lot of reasons it didn't work out in the Big Time program. But if you start to see this push and pull where the guy who was a star recruit is just going to go ahead and transfer, I think we're already feeling it, down so he can get playing time. And the counterpart, who was a 2-star recruit, who's making things happen, wants to go play in the Big Ten. I think there's versions of that in football and basketball. And by the way, there was an article this week about kind of laughing about the notion of Division II and Division III schools creating collectives themselves. But what they're fighting against is this. They're fighting against this problem that their star player who can, especially in basketball at a North Dakota State, can change everything and win championships. But Kentucky wants him. And you're going to have that good ride with him that season, but he's we can't keep him. And that's what the collectives, they're going to be these defensive, keep our players here type things. It's not going to be about pulling people. It's going to be about retaining who we have so we can compete with the big boys.
Greg, let's talk more in detail about that next week.
Sounds great.
There is a lot of things. The Athletic recently came out with an article about Power 5 schools and non-Power 5 schools, what's going on, blabbing on each other, what good does it do anyway, the scenarios that are already existing and the scenarios that we can see coming up. Let's talk about that next week because our time is actually already wrapping up. So I want to remind people to listen, rate, review, and share The Professor and the Pundit with Greg Dooley and Steve Clarke. These are available wherever you get your podcast.
And by the way, if it's not available on one of your services that you like, let us know.
Greg will definitely be able to take care of it because that's what Greg can do. What can Greg do for you is a good question. I think we know what we need to do after going through the podcast and listening to it again. We know what we need to do better, but it also helps out to read things from people about things we may never even thought of. So please, again, rate, review, and share all our episodes. We're going to start dropping these in on a weekly basis now. Wednesdays is what we're looking at.
Yep, up through the summer. We're going to go right into the football season as our plan, and we're super excited. And I mentioned I was at the ChadTough thing this weekend. Had a couple people come up to me, complete strangers, saw my name tag, and said, when's the next podcast coming out? So that was cool.
Love hearing that. That's great. So that is it for The Professor and the Pundit with Greg Dooley and Steve Clarke. Again, we are presented by Nick Hopwood, a certified financial planner, founder and president of Peak Wealth Management. Retire with confidence. It was good to have Nick on with us earlier in the program. You'll be hearing from Nick as we ask questions about investing periodically throughout the summer and fall. Next week on The Professor and the Pundit, Greg and I will continue our discussion on the revolution and soon-to-be evolution of college football rosters in the Power 5 and Group of 5. And it's not going to be long before we talk about Michigan football in the preseason as well as their opponents. But until then, remember, Michigan football, back-to-back Big Ten champs and winners over Ohio State and Michigan State. Go Blue.
Go Blue.